We got it now? We got it now? Okay. Hey, my name is Bill Gagne, and this is the Royal City Hoops Podcast. It's been a little while since I've done one of these, but I've been guilted into doing this in my free time, my spare time, when I have other stuff to do. Thanks, Quan. However, I have been wanting to do one of these, even though he's been passive-aggressively pestering me in our poker group, to do one of these every week for 50 days. But hey, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about the trade deadline. What else is there to talk about? We're going to talk about trades that happened, trades that didn't happen, the buyout market. It's going to be lots of fun stuff. So if you enjoy this just out of practice, why don't you give me the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button. I don't know why you do that because I don't do these very often, but why not? Just for my feelings. Let's talk about trades. Let's talk about the trades that happened first. So I'm pretty shocked about the trade. Well, shouldn't say shocked, but surprised because there was no chatter about the Nick Vucevic trade to Chicago. I personally like the trade for Chicago. I like what they're doing. They're trying to be a real team. They're trying to be competent. We've seen with other organizations that if you show that you can be a team and grow and develop players and be competent, be a good place, that you will attract stars. I mean, look at what happened with Brooklyn. Look at what happened with the Clippers. Look at what happened with Toronto. They built teams, and then they got one player, and that kind of closed the deal for them to make them elite. I think Chicago's on that path. Vucevic's contract isn't that atrocious. He is a good player in the middle of his prime. Nowadays, contracts aren't that long. They've got some young players that they can turn into something. They traded Wendell Carter Jr., who was a bit of a disappointment to this point in his career. Who knows what will happen? He had a lot of injuries. They still have Lowry under contract. So let's see what happens there. That could still be moved around in the summer. They were hot for Lonzo Ball, but couldn't make the deal work once they traded for Vucevic. So that's an interesting little play. We'll talk a little bit about Lonzo Ball later. But I certainly think Chicago, and then Chicago went out and added another piece in Daniel Tice, which is a nice little addition to their team. They're just upgrading themselves on the whole. Now they're better at the 5, and their backup 5 looks pretty good. I mean, Zach LaVine just got hurt. Still, Kobe White, Zach LaVine, Patrick Williams seems to be a decent piece. I haven't seen them play yet, but looking at, well, if I did, I saw them early in the year, and they did not look like they look now. So that was a nice little move for them. I give them an A for that. We're not going to give all these teams grades. I'm just going to throw stuff out there here and there. I think that was a really good deal for the Bulls. Who else did well is the Denver Nuggets, getting Aaron Gordon. Now, there was a lot of chatter about Orlando trading him. He had put his name out there himself, asking for a trade. So the time was up. He needed to change his scenery. Orlando needed to blow it up anyways. They were just fighting for the play-in tournament every year from now till eternity without going through a major breakdown. So it was smart of them to unload him. I don't think they could have gotten more for Gordon. He lands in a really nice fit in Denver. As a tweener forward for them, defender. There's no question he's the fourth option there. You got Jokic, Murray, Michael Porter Jr. He's not going out there thinking he's going to be their go-to guy getting 20 shots a game. He's really in a good spot to do what he does well. I think he can be that playmaking 4, 3.5, 4 out there, setting the table for everybody else in that Draymond Green role. He's a decent passer. He can see the floor. He's a good defender. I think he'll thrive in that role. And they landed a backup 5 with some bounce in JaVale McGee, who's, always entertaining. Who else we got here? Miami made a very, very interesting move getting Oladipo, who is essentially on an expiring contract, as a tryout. Everybody's calling it that, a tryout, whether it's Zach Lowe, Woj, Windhorst. They're calling it a tryout because Victor Oladipo has long wanted to be a member of the Heat. Now he's there. They get to try him out for nothing. If he is even close to the player he was when he was All-NBA, it'll be a great deal. If he's not, nothing really lost. They gave up some expirings, nothing crazy. They didn't have to give up Duncan Robinson. They didn't have to give up Tyler Hero. None of their core. So good move for them. They also got Nemanja Bjelica, who is a stretch 4-5, stretch mark 5, because he looks like he eats a lot of donuts. But the guy can shoot the lights out, right? When he gets hot, he can hit 4 or 5 threes in a game, no problem. He's a decent rebounder. You're going to lack a little on the defensive end, but you can pair him with Bam Adebayo a little bit and have a little bit of output there. So I like that move for nothing because Mo Harkless, who they traded, he wasn't doing anything for them. And they have Precious Achiuwa that they think super highly of. So Bjelica will be a situational player. A lot of those minutes that Olynyk was getting are going to go to Achiuwa and mix it around. So not a lot lost there. Next, we got the Celtics picking up on the fire sale in Orlando with, oh, my dog's really trying to get my attention here. Picking up on Orlando's fire sale with Evan Fournier. Now, the Celtics were desperate for wing depth. Fournier is a shooter. He is not super athletic. He's a pro. He's been around, but he hasn't been on great teams, and he hasn't performed well in the playoffs. But he won't be asked to do that for the Celtics. He'll be asked to be a bench guy. They are seriously missing bench production. They're underperforming this year, but I really think Danny Ainge is punting on this season and just playing it out, not knowing what's going to happen, keeping himself in check. He stockpiled a lot of picks. All those picks are gone, and they never really materialize into anything. So he's, I think, playing it safe. Fournier's on an expiring. We'll see what happens if he gives them a little pop. Maybe they get to the second round. Right now, they're at the bottom of the East playoff bracket, teetering around that play-in tournament. So we'll see what happens. Next, we got the Clippers and the Hawks. Now, Rondo wasn't doing that much for the Hawks, and I'm really surprised that he even signed with them in the beginning of the season. Everything was pointed to him going to the Clippers, and guess what? Now he's with the Clippers. And the Clippers could have gotten him earlier in the year. They could have signed him in the offseason. They didn't. And they wouldn't have had to give up Lou Williams. So, not exactly a great front office move from them when they could have just had him earlier in the year. And now they had to give up Lou Williams, who really is a bench scoring stalwart for them. He's going to add that to Atlanta. And plus, the strip clubs there are going to be extra happy that he's in town because he really likes their lemon pepper wings. But that's neither here nor there. A couple of under-the-radar deals that I liked was Dallas getting J.J. Reddick. They have been missing a shooter like that. They've been missing Seth Curry pretty badly. And I think J.J. Reddick can slip right into that role as a consistent shooter, little P&R with Porzingis or whoever, Maxi Kleber, secondary playmaking out there. I think that's a nice add. My hope is that he hasn't hit the point where he's too old and it's over and we don't know it yet, and neither does he. But here's hoping that there's still some left in the tank because he's just an incredible shooter. He's probably the first guy that I've seen that really learned to shoot with the drift, like he made it on purpose. So he'd catch and drift to make separation in the air, and it was successful at it. Normally, guys, you want to get them going up and down when they're shooting, but he's an incredible shooter. And I think that's a good add for Dallas. We'll see how it plays out. Now, the Sixers made a nice move adding George Hill. Under the radar, nothing crazy. George Hill isn't a sexy player. He's not Kyle Lowry. We'll talk about that later. But he does a lot of the things that Lowry does. He's a steady presence. He's solid defensively. He can shoot the ball. He can get you into your offense. He's a little Kyle Lowry-like, Doesn't have the rings, doesn't have the cachet, the all-star appearances. But he fits what the Sixers need at a much lower price tag. Another deal we're going to talk about is the Blazers and the Raptors. I like this for both teams. I like it more for the Raptors. Sure, Norm Powell had a great year. He's been up and down, though. He was playing incredible this year. Averaging 20 a game, I think. He moves really well without the ball. He can kind of fit seamlessly into a lot of things. And he was shooting the hell out of it. He really came along with his jumper. When I was watching him in the earlier years, it was always real confusing thing to watch him shoot because his mechanics were both good and bad. You know, he'd shoot it kind of on the way down or as he'd get to the top of his jump and get flat and lose all his momentum and shoot. And now he's really figured it out because he's got a good touch and he's figured out his mechanics and it's really paying dividends, and the confidence he's got shooting the ball is just incredible because he doesn't sort of force it, you know, but when he was younger, he'd miss a few shots and then he'd kind of stretch his mechanics like hoping it in. Now, if he misses 2-3 in a row, he knows the next one's going in. If that one doesn't get in, he knows the next one going in. And you can just see it by the way he moves and the confidence he has. But he also got a ton of playing time. There was nobody in front of him, and he did what he was supposed to do. He stepped in and made it happen. And good for him. He's going to get a big payday. And I don't think the Raptors wanted to pay him $20 million. I know that would not have been my preference. Now they're getting a younger guy, Gary Trent Jr., solid defensively, good shooter, lots of upside, friendly contract, isn't going to make that kind of money. And I like the fact that they got Rodney Hood in that deal, who is a hit or miss player, but he had some depth, some shooting, and who knows, maybe he finds his game again. So I like that deal for both teams, more so for the Raptors, because in the future they're going to have Pascal, OG, Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent. That's a pretty good base to have, and maybe you hit on a draft pick or two, or something happens, you get somebody in free agency who wasn't supposed to be good that blows up. Who knows? I'm a homer, just playing it out. The last deal we're going to talk about that happened is the PJ Tucker to the Bucks. Sure, why not? What else are you going to do? He's a solid rotation player. He's got some pop left in terms of defensively. You can never have too many guys that guard, and if he can figure out how to shoot again, he'll be a pretty decent ad, especially since Miami's a contender going into the playoffs. And defense is what they're going to have to use to get past Brooklyn. Otherwise, what's the point? They can't put together the offensive firepower that Brooklyn has. Well, now let's talk about the deals that did not happen. First and foremost, Kyle Lowry. Now, what I've heard is that Lowry was saying that any team that was going to trade for him, he wanted a 2-year deal starting at around $25 million a year for a 36, soon to be 37-year-old point guard. $35 million or $25 million or $50 million over 2 years. I'm not interested in that. I love Kyle Lowry. I hear the rhetoric that he's the best Raptor ever. Sure, I'm on board. I love him. I was on board if they were going to trade him, if he wanted to go, if he wanted to stay. But $50 million for 2 years for a 37-year-old point guard? Ooh, I don't think that's going to look too good in the second year of that deal. But there's lots of cap space out there. There's teams that are going to want to use it. Good for him if he gets it. I really hope the Raptors are not the ones to give it to him. Now, he was rumored to Philly. He was rumored to Miami. Certainly in Philly, he would have been incredible. In LA was another team in the mix. That would have been awesome. But alas, he's with none of them. Here's the other trade that didn't happen that I was interested in, was the Lonzo Ball trade. And I was really interested in it for my fantasy team because I managed to pick up Nickeil Alexander-Walker thinking Lonzo was going to be traded and now I'd be getting the best of both worlds. Well, now Lonzo's on the bench injured and Nickeil's starting, so now I got another decision to make when it comes to my roster. However, we're not here to talk about my fantasy team. We're here to talk about the NBA trade deadline. Chicago was hot for Lonzo in there. Surely would have been a great fit with their young team with the pieces they've added. Now, he was starting to click a little bit. He's really changed his shot. His shot looks really good. He's changed his mechanics. His elbow is under. It looks smooth. He's shooting well. If he can get some free throws to go down, that'd be even better. But he's looking good. He's got a great chemistry with Zion. So I don't blame the Pelicans for not trading him and thinking, okay, let's make the best of this. You go out, you get a deal, we'll match, we'll see what happens. I think it's a smart move. Both parties, right? He's going to have his pick. He's going to be able to field offers, and the Pelicans can just match. Or not match. Up to them. So those are the two deals that did not happen that I was surprised with. I'm sure there were some other deals talked about, but those are the ones that hit me in the face. Let's talk about the buyout market. Brooklyn is really putting together a team that can score a lot of points and is going to get scored on almost as much. They picked up Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge in the buyout market. I don't know. I don't know what those guys do for you. Are you really going to run them out there? I'm worried about injuries with that team. KD's spent some time out. Harden's been amazing for them, just taking it to another level. But yeah, I don't know what they're going to do defensively. They haven't addressed that. They're just going to try to outscore people, and this would be amazing, and this would be the first team in NBA history, I think, that just flat out outscores people. I don't know that they could turn it up on defense, even if they wanted to. That was the comparison to some of the LeBron teams who weren't great defensively rated in the season, and then in the playoffs turned it up when they needed to. I don't think that's going to happen here. Another candidate in the buyout market, Andre Drummond, signed with the Lakers. I think there was no worse kept secret in the NBA than that, but there's never any certainty. Nobody would have thought Aldridge was going to sign with the Nets. Everybody thought it was going to be Miami. Never worked out. What's left on the buyout market? I mean, Gorgie Deng just signed with the Spurs after being waived. I think we got Austin Rivers is really the big name. And there's talk that he's going to the Bucks, which I think would be a good move because he's going to give him some pop scoring off the bench. He's 6'5". He's a real pro now, whereas earlier in his career, it was just a real question mark on whether he belonged in the league. And now it's clear he belongs. There's just a logjam with the Knicks at guard, and he was just on the out. Just numbers game. So, what do you think? Was that good enough, Quan? I want to say, like if you like, comment if you got something to say, and subscribe at your own risk. Thanks for watching. Now it's time for the awkward pause.